This is Trophy Gold, the Croatoa, Part 1. I want to, everybody here is an experienced Trophy Gold player, and specifically with me. And so I'm not going to be saying anything for the first few minutes that you all don't know. But for anybody watching the video, I'm going to do CATS. CATS is an acronym that stands for Concept, Aim, Tone, and Subject Matter, just to establish some basic expectations for what we're going to be doing. But before I do CATS, I want to just introduce everyone, or have us introduce ourselves. When I call on you, please say your name, your pronouns, and anything else you would like for us to know about you. I'll start. My name is Jason. I use he, him. They is also fine. I am the publisher of Trophy, and I co-host a podcast called Fear of a Black Dragon, which reviews lots of modules like the ones we're going to run for this series. Let's go over to James.
Hi, I'm James, and my pronouns are he, him, and I'm a sort of fairly long time now player and GM of Trophy, and I've got an incursion coming out soon called Cutting Words in Codex Hex. And
a couple weeks, in fact, yeah.
Ooh, and yeah, I love playing content from Codex, so I'm excited to. And everything with the word Croatoan or Croatoa in always gets my attention because I love that mythology. So I'm interested in that.
Fabulous, thank you, Adrian.
My name is Adrian, he, him pronouns. I've played quite a bit of Trophy last year, and looking forward to playing this again and playing this character again, and looking forward to finally getting a Trophy Gold book in my hands sometime this year.
We're all looking forward to that. Daniel.
I'm Daniel. I'm he, him, and I've been running a between game since July of last year, and now we're starting to phase into Trophy Gold, and so I'm excited about keeping this going.
Thank you. And Rob.
Hi, I'm Rob. I use he, him. I've been playing Trophy with Jason on as many opportunities as I can get hold of, and also playing some of the between. And yesterday I dipped my toe for the first time in trying to do a bit of writing an unseen for the between. So yeah, that's me. And I'm very much looking forward to getting hold of the dice that are going to come with the trophy yes. Kickstarter set.
Yes, I do have those. I've got loads of those. Awesome. Yeah, I was informed that you have been thrilling and delighting the Between Discord channel as of late, Rob. I can't keep up with it, so I just trust that's true. Okay, let's go back to CATS. Okay, so concept. Trophy Gold, of course, is a fantasy adventure game about desperate treasure hunters exploring the lost and forgotten parts of the world. They are trying to find valuables and money in order to help them satisfy some very expensive drive that causes them to do this, frankly, ill-advised work. It is a very traditional OSR type game in spirit and aesthetic, though mechanically it is based off Trophy, so it's actually much more of a story game than it is a traditional OSR type game. So you get the feeling and the flavor of the OSR and of traditional fantasy without a lot of the mechanical assumptions of those games. The particular module we are doing is called the Croatoa. It was originally published in Codex Blood 2. I'm the publisher of that as well. And I'm not going to say anything else about it because it would spoil the module, but we will have a link to Codex Blood 2 in the show notes. We will also have a link to Trophy Gold, the pre-order page for that in the show notes as well, or the YouTube notes. The Croatoa we're actually doing next week. This, because it's a very short module, we don't need 2 whole sessions. So we'll be doing that next week. This week, we're going to be doing a little prelude scenario that has a lot of thematic connections to the Croatoa, but is in fact created by me about 10 minutes ago using Trophy Loom. So, Trophy Loom is also available to pre-order. We'll have a link to that as well in the YouTube notes. The aim of today is to introduce the characters. We have all returning characters, and so we'll introduce the characters, and then we will start playing. The aim of the characters is to get treasure. That is your main thing, and stay alive. And the tone of the game is the tone of Trophy Gold generally is very dark and desperate. This particular 2 sessions we're doing has a very, very strong horror vibe. So this is not light and adventurous fantasy gaming we're about to do. It is quite intense horror that we're about to do. So be prepared for that. In terms of subject matter, I think the biggest thing in this one is there's just a lot of like, there's a lot of bleak, gruesome shit in this. Stuff like murder, cannibalism comes up a little bit. Just very, very dark stuff. So just be aware of it. We have a safety tool, several safety tools we'll have in place. We'll be doing the X card, which in the context of this video call, you just say X card or type it in the chat. If you want to X something out, we'll stop and figure out what that is, and then we'll change it. We have lines and veils, which is handled in the character keeper. You all should go in and make sure you mark that. And then the open door policy, you can just leave if you need to. And so that is cats. I think at this point, I want to go through and introduce all the characters. 3 of these characters we just saw in a series called the Academy Chrysalis. And so they're all together again. And one of the characters came from another series I ran called The Ghost of Mistmore. And so they're all returning characters, but one of them is from a different adventure. So they're all new. So that character is new to this group. Let's go ahead and introduce the characters, though. You can tell us whatever you want about them. This is not like the Between where you have to keep anything secret. So I'm going to go in the order of the sheet. Rob, tell us about Arno.
Arno is a retired soldier who became a sellsword. That gives him the skills of athletics, defense, weapons, and tactics. He has a drive of finding the resting ground of the morning night, which we established over the course of his previous adventure, is a saint that he witnessed her presence on the battlefield after a bloody siege. He has a single ritual which is obscure, which allows him to hide a person or object from spirits. He wears some armor, a battered cuirass, and some heavy leather gauntlets, and he formerly carried a horseman's pick, but over the course of his adventure in the Academy Chrysalis, he lost the ability to wield heavier weapons. And this is a cause of some consternation, obviously, and some examination of his direction in life. So I'll be interested to find out where he goes from here.
Fabulous. I love it. That is wonderful. Let's go over to Daniel and Lysander.
Lysander Spivey is a former librarian from Levesti, who comes from a noble family, but he's been disinherited. He originally was trying to get the resources and gold to have his mother reestablished as the premier agricultural chemist of Levesti, but in the process of going through the Chrysalis to get to the Academy of Chrysalis, he now has a new drive, which is to discover a way to leave this reality. And he's got he's seen it. He knows how it's done. He's just going to try to recreate it, and it's going to cost some resources. His skills are appraisal, stealth, because he's a librarian, myths, and organization. And his rituals are reunite, which is he's able to summon the spirit of his deceased lover, Marcello. He picked up a new ability there, a new ritual there called duplicate, which allows him to create a duplicate of himself for a brief period. And in terms of equipment, he has a Levesti librarian dueling saber and a leather jacket with brass rings sewed on it. And he's now got his helmet, which is this stylized, look like a powdered wig. He's got that reassembled, and so he's ready for action.
Fabulous, thank you. Let's go to James and a character who we've seen in numerous adventures that I've run, Horagust.
The horror guest is a geomancer is the occupation, and the dying elder is the background. His drive is to discover the cure for Garland's curse, which he came this close to doing in another dimension, meeting a strange fae named Oa, and was cruelly snatched back into this reality by Arno's intervention, for which he has not forgiven him. Yet they are on this adventure together. His skills are omens, ritual, sacrifice, and something's happened to one of my skills. I think it's construction. And basically, he's developed quite a lot of rituals now. So he started with brimstone and unfall, growing scorching hot to the touch and reversing gravity. But now, due to passing through a bubble, a magical bubble, his hair's gone frosted white, and he can turn translucent like glass. And he learnt in the library of the academy how to move an enchantment from one object to another, which he's now used to create a mythical Fey staff, which should hopefully lead him back to the Fey realm to discover the cure for Garland's curse.
Fabulous, thank you. And joining us most recently from the Ghost of Mistmore is Sister Reyna. Adrian, tell us about Sister Reyna.
I'm playing Sister Reyna. She, they pronounce. She used to be a knight, and her occupation is leech, or was leech. She got into, after kind of probably getting hurt at some battle or so, she recovered in some form of religious institution and became part of that institution as some form of nun for a while, and working in forensic surgery, kind of in the medical department there, so to speak. And she knows a couple of rituals, the ritual bottle and the ritual switch. If you want to see how she uses that, you can go watch the other Ghost of Mistmore series, because that was the main event for her at the end of that. But she also picked up a new one, Enliven, recently. She has 4 burdens, no gold at the moment, and her ruin is 4, and she still has the condition the Raven, carrying over from the Ghosts
That's good
adventure.
Yeah.
She carries a longsword and a shield, and some other things. That's her, and she has already gotten quite a bit of gold stashed away somewhere.
I was going to point out that the other 3 characters collectively have 2 gold hoard collectively, whereas Sister Reyna has 12 by herself. So sometimes in Trophy Gold, getting on the right adventure is the correct answer. Good. Okay, I love it. With characters introduced, as always, we don't really dwell too much on how you all know each other. We maybe discover that as we play. Of course, 3 of you, we know exactly how you know each other. And let's just go ahead and begin. You have been in a quite inhospitable wilderness for a number of days. This is a cold, occasionally snowy, rocky, mountainous wilderness. Trees, lots of tough elevation, very, very bitter cold. You are seeking out a bounty, actually. We'll talk about the bounty in a moment. But this wilderness journey, it sucks. And I don't think anyone has taught these characters the concept of the sunk cost fallacy, because you probably should have turned around ages ago. But nevertheless, you are here. You ate your animals a number of days ago, and so you find yourselves in this horrible, bitter environment, believing you are getting closer to your bounty. before we talk about the bounty, I would like to just know how each of you is trying to deal with this very, very hostile environment that you're in currently. Whoever wants to narrate some of that for themselves, please do.
I've got this idea that if we can take bits and pieces of our leather and mince them with some blades, we could boil them and maybe we'll get enough nutrients from the broth. I think it'll work. It sounds delicious. I will get to work on that and start asking each of you for a small piece of leather.
Arno is bundled up in layers of cloaks and just doing his best to ignore the others. He has gained some grudging respect for Lysander over the course of their time together. He's still somewhat distrustful of Horrorguest and doesn't know Sister Raina very well at all at this point. He has found himself a piece of wood that he's chewing on to try and stave off the hunger pangs, and is just bundling up with his head down, not looking anyone in the face, and just trying to soldier on as best he can.
I'm assuming that probably one of the reasons Arno is not very happy with Horrorguest is he keeps making snide comments about being rudely ejected from his heart's desire, and saying sort of things that he just hasn't forgotten about the whole thing with the chrysalis, which was weeks ago or months ago at this point. I think Horrorguest is basically coughing and his feet have gone numb. And he's a bit worried that it's not frostbite and that he's getting sick, that in fact the illness is making his curse progress and that his toes might have actually turned into stone when he hasn't had the heart to take his shoe off. But every time he finds a rocky outcrop, he whispers to it and draws warmth and strength for it to keep himself going, and everyone else thinks he's just talking to rocks, like always.
Sister Rena grabs something from her little backpack that she's wearing. Have something for your soup. She pulls out this jar of glowworms. And I think if you're already cooking leather, you might as well just put this in it.
Any protein will do at this point. I love it. Let's talk about your bounty. A number of weeks ago, a man called Sindhu murdered a Lavasti lord called Bracken. Bracken's son has put a bounty on this man Sindhu's head, and you all are pursuing it. If you can find Sindhu and bring the newly installed young Lord Bracken Sindhu's head, you will each be paid, you'll be paid a pretty significant sum of silver equal to 1 gold each. And you are presently following up on a rumor of a man hiding out in the hills where there is a rickety cabin supposed to have been built there by some other people long ago. And you're in luck because you arrive at the cabin and you find Sindhu. Horrorguest, what is the identifying mark on Sindhu's person that confirms just at a glance that this is the right man?
I think Sindhu has a very distinctive white streak of hair and a big jagged scar down the forehead.
Sindhu meets you out in the yard in front of the cabin, which is just a field of snow and scrubby grass. And the rumors that you've been hearing are that Sindhu is a beast bitten. Turns out those rumors were correct. because Sindhu begins to transform before your eyes. He begins to wail and contort as sharp purplish spines burst out from his back. His hands grow and fuse into large pincher-like claws, and his eyes become perfectly mirror black and then burst out of sockets on stalks. And he is accompanied by a trio of spectral crabs that are also skittering in around you. And so this crab-like beast-bitten Sindhu and his spectral crabs, they launch themselves at you, and we're going to do a combat. Please describe how you're vulnerable and roll your weak point.
Arnau is just exhausted and still dealing with the fact that he can't wield the type of weapon he's used to. So he's kind of ill-suited to fend these creatures off.
Lysander's vulnerable because he's having flashbacks of the Opaline crawl in the tunnels beneath the academy, and it's and he says crustaceans as he takes a couple steps back.
Indeed.
I think Horrorgas was in the middle of another like passive aggressive screed against Arnaud about and he wasn't really paying attention, and then yeah, just kind of wasn't really prepared.
I think Sister Rena has kind of let the other three deal with all of this because they seem to, know, like they seem to be their own team for now. And she has been kind of not really paying that much attention, kind of along for the ride, and wasn't really prepared for this. So she, still has to get her bearing.
And so what are the weak points that we have on the table right now? 5, 1, 3, and 6. A nice variety of weak points. This is a combat 10. Arnau, you can do the honors roll. Or you're looking for, it's endurance 10, combat 4, sorry. So roll a combat 4. Hey, that'll do it. 6, 5, 5, and 1. The 6 and the 5 are enough to defeat Sindhu and his spectral crabs. Regrettably, it looks like Lysander is taking 2 hits, and Horrorgas is taking a hit, and Arnau is taking a hit. This is a tough fight. You win, but it's a tough fight. It looks like Sister Rena is fine.
Wasn't really part of it, like I said.
Yeah, you are going to win, though. I think we probably dispatch the spectral crabs first, and then the killing blow against Sindhu at the end. Let's kick it off, Arnau.
Yeah, I think Arnau just shrugs off his cloak and kind of wrestles these crabs as they come towards him. Picking them up by whatever limb they raise toward him and flinging them as far away from him as possible.
Yeah, I should mention they're quite big. They're like dog-sized. So. Yeah.
And then once he's able to clear some space, he closes with them and stabs them with his dagger.
Nice. And as they disappear, they just like disappear into like a puff of spectral crackle and energy. They don't have any physical form. Keep it going, Lysander.
I'm slashing and hacking at the crabs, and I'm painfully aware that I might have taken off too much leather, and I feel my jacket starting to unravel as I back up. I'm with one arm I'm holding my jacket together, and the other I'm hacking at these crabs.
And Horrorgast.
I think Horrorgast, he goes straight for crab Sindhu and basically starts ringing his bells that he got like the Fey bells, making this discordant, hideous tone, and it just like make the eye stalk start twitching and the mouthpiece and starts frothing and the crab starts writhing, and that gives him a chance to start like whacking the crab with his staff, cracking open the shell, but then a slash of one of the claws just like cuts open his shoulder quite badly, and he takes a hit in a gap in his surcoat.
Nice. Sister Reyna, finish off the fight, including Sindhu.
Okay, so then that might actually be, so Sister Rina with her sword might actually just have kind of wandered around these three, engaged with the spectral crabs and all of this fight, and basically just found the right moment to then pierce Sindhu with her sword.
I love it.
With again one movement.
Lysander, roll a gold 10, please. Um, 10 gold dice was 0 gold from the combat. However, by collecting Sindhu's head, you do get 1 gold each at the end. So I assume someone is going to be collecting Sindhu's head directly.
I think I'm going to do it. I think Horageth's going to like hack his sort of partially transformed head off and say, "That's what you get for messing with us." And there's like gemstones kind of oozing out of his wound, which confirms his suspicion, like sort of a weird, like crusty diamond like blood, which confirms that his curse is getting worse.
Let's talk about just here at the end with Sindhu's blood spattered on the white snow. I wanted to ask, Arnau, did you take a hit or did you mark armor last time?
I took a hit. I think Arnau was just so, he was trying to barrel his way through these spectral crabs so that the others had a chance to get to Sindhu, and yeah, there were some cuts and scrapes that he acquired along the way. Nothing too heinous, but
yeah, that's good. So there's a bit of a clearing where this cabin is, and this cabin is sort of the focus of our little prelude here, because you have not seen shelter in a long time. This is a place you could actually probably spend the night. It has a chimney, which means you can light a fire in it. It seems like a pretty small cabin from the outside, maybe 2 rooms or just 1 large room. It is made from very like sort of split gray timbers, but it seems reasonably intact. And one curious detail about the cabin is it has just a little bit to the left of it, there is a little arrangement of stones, like a pile of stones. There's a circle here for the cabin, which is quite simply to safely pass the night. And so let's take a 5-minute break. We'll come back and we'll begin that. So there's a cabin. It's the first man-made structure you've seen in quite a while. And you can see there is a bricked chimney coming out of the top of it, so that's promising. And there is a little pile of stones next to the cabin, maybe 20 or 30 feet away. Arnau, what do you do?
is there any kind of perimeter around this cabin? Is there like a low wall or anything like that? Just
no, it's just tree line.
Okay, I think I would like to go and just take a look at this pile of stones. From the description, it sounds to me like it may be a grave marker or a cairn of some kind. So I think Arno was curious to see if there's any indication who it belongs to, or
Make a hunt roll.
do I have any relevant skills here? I feel like I'm not really sure that I'm using any skills to
Might just be a one die
apply to
roll.
this. Yeah, so a straight one die hunt on one. Encounter something terrible.
I will tell you what you find. You will notice that another 50 paces or so away in the direction of the tree line is another little pile of stones. And then another 50 paces away or so, right up to the edge of the tree line, is still another little pile of stones. If these are grave markers, it appears there were a few deaths, if they're grave markers. The terrible thing, and you can interpret that however you wish, is, or you can determine how terrible you think it is, I should say, is you notice footprints, not boot prints, footprints in the snow coming in the direction of the cabin. They are, yeah, that's what you notice. But cut over to Horrorgust. What are you doing, Horrorgust?
I think Horrorgust is going to come out of the cabin sort of like very like angry and say, "What have we learnt? Don't mess with piles of stones. These are probably of ritual significance. You look, and there's more of them. That's ridiculous. These are obviously terrible and a terrible omen, and you're going to die, and don't touch them. Leave this to the rock expert."
I was not about to touch them, but look at the arrangement. Maybe there's some kind of trail marker or something, rather than what I had assumed to be grave markers. And look at these footprints. There may be something inside in that cabin.
Lysander,
This
what are you
is
doing?
obviously terrible.
Lysander, what are you up to?
If Arno thinks there may be somebody in the cabin, and then I'm going to proceed to the cabin with saber drawn and listen as I approach wherever I try to find the door, but I'm listening as I sneak. Oh, as I stealthily approach the cabin.
Yeah, that's fine. Make a hunt roll. You also encounter something terrible with a 3 and a 3. We'll come back to that. Sister Rena, what are you doing?
I think Sister Rena is trying to examine the corpse of Sindhu to see whether there's anything about like what might have been around here, were they hurt before by something else that might be still around or something like this, anything dangerous. Because I have forensics.
Very good. So you're examining the area around the cabin, right?
Yeah, basically, like, and the corpse of Sindhu, and yeah, where we just had the fight,
yeah.
and see like whether they had to defend themselves or Sindhu had to defend themselves against something here in the before we came around.
Roll a 2-die hunt die or hunt roll.
A 5.
Take your token, but you also encounter something terrible. Let me pick up Lysander. Lysander, you can't hear anything in the cabin. The cabin has 2 shutter windows, one in the front, one in the back, and then there's a door. And you're carefully listening and you don't hear anything. It sounds stone silent. However, just as you're getting ready to step away, Just as you're getting ready to step away, you hear a scratching sound coming from below, like someone is underneath the earth or something scratching there. But it's small, quick, subtle. You can't hear anything else if you listen more closely. What do you do?
I look back to where Horagast and Arno are, and I start walking backwards, keeping my eye on the ground, walking backwards, but trying to wave back to them, snapping, trying to get at least Horagast. And I might even hiss his name.
I think I'll come over to Lysander and say, "Oh, how original. There's something living under the ground. This has never happened to us before. Well, let's find out who you are." And I'll put the staff to the ground and start trying to intuit what's scratching.
Make a hunt roll.
I'm going to use my my attunement to do this.
Yeah, well, I think also just the staff too would give you the second time.
Oh yeah,
so,
that's true.
yeah.
Oh, great. I got a double too. This is a wonderful day for all of us.
Whatever's down below, there are 12 of them. How do you know that?
Each one has a unique, horrible timbre to their scratching.
They're otherwise quite quiet. Sister Rena, Sindhu actually seems pretty well fed. He must have provisions of some sort, probably in the cabin. And so I think he was well situated to at least last for a while. But maybe that's the terrible thing. Sindhu felt like he had to stay here for a while. I will note that you will notice Sindhu had laid a few, not traps, but like little jangling noisemakers around the perimeter of the woods, or someone did, presumably Sindhu. Arno, what are you doing right now?
I am standing on guard in case there is any danger from these creatures under the ground. My guess is that there are probably more of these crab creatures. And if Horagast can identify where they are or what they are, Arnell's getting ready to tackle them if need be.
There's no apparent obvious way that you would be able to get down into the ground. So
I'm more concerned about them tunneling up to us, I think.
It could well be something completely innocuous too, right? Foxes or something.
I think Horagast is going to suggest setting like a runic circle around this house to try and warn us if someone crosses in, and try and contain or encapsulate whatever's within the circle. But that will take several hours.
It seems like a good project though. Lysander, what are you doing?
Going to the house, checking the door to see if it's unlocked, to see if we can get inside.
It is. Inside, it is a fairly simple 2-room cabin. I'll give you just the basics and you can tell me what you do after that. A simple 2-room affair. The front room that you enter through does have a brick hearth, and there is a table with a couple of chairs. And in the back, the second room, there is a bed, a trunk at the foot of the bed, and a surprisingly a surprisingly like plush rug, like in good condition, woven with orange and red and gold fibers. So what do you do, Lysander?
I looked for the food stores. And is there food on the table? Is there food by the hearth? I'm looking for food.
Make a hunt roll.
I'm guessing that's a hunt one.
Unless you have some particular piece of equipment or skill that comes to bear. Yeah.
I have organization. I don't know if that would help.
Yeah,
in
I
terms
don't
of-
think it's that
like the
complicated.
pantry.
There's no pantry. So it's mostly just the basics, what is here sort of questions.
I got a 6.
Good, take your token. Yeah, you will see that Sindhu's, I don't know if you find food right away, but you will see that Sindhu has, you can see Sindhu's like a change of clothes, a pack, other boots and things like that, like over by the bed. Might be something promising there.
I will go through the pack.
We'll come back to that. Arnell, what are you doing?
I think seeing no immediate danger, I will join Lysander in the hut and see if I can also. We're all desperately hungry, so I think the first one to the food gets the first pick of whatever may be there. So there's a desperation element to it.
There are not many foodstuffs there. Sindhu had basically just, it looks like Sindhu was pretty close to the end, actually. There's just like one little rolled bundle of rations. It would be a hard and skimpy meal split between the 4 of you. Dried hardtack, bits of meat, that kind of thing. Salted venison. Horgus, what are you doing right now?
Our guest is pacing the circle of the wind of the chimes and laying down a combination of the runes for brimstone and the runes for rest, so that anyone who passes through the circle glows scorching, or like all the trees basically, but things burst into flames and like make a big flash and like let us know and hopefully injure them. But that's going to take like several hours of painstakingly going around in a circle and laying runes.
What's the Sister Rena then?
I think Sister Rena comes into the hut as well, and seeing the others with this meager food, I think she says, have you seen how well fed this man out there, what he looks like? There has to be more food here somewhere.
Who's got his head? Where's his head?
Our guest took it and put it in his bag out of pique for being injured.
I didn't notice anything but his head. So that's what's worth some money.
Well, he didn't have a big belly on his head, but he definitely did have one. And he fed it. He continued to grow it somehow here, or keep it fat at least. So there has to be more food somewhere.
There may be a root cellar or winter store buried under the ground. I suggest we start a fire to get ourselves warm, and then we search more thoroughly.
Yes.
A fire sounds like a great idea. The fire is getting started. At this point, the sun is getting pretty low over the tree line. It's not quite dusk yet, but we're getting there. And that means it's getting colder as well, so the fire is well timed. Lysander, while that's all going on, you had already looked through Sindhu's things, and I will tell you that in addition to this like meager rations, you also found, let me take a look at my notes actually. You found a couple of other things as well. One thing you find is a free use of additional equipment. So you can take something from the additional equipment list and add it to your found equipment if you wish. But also, he has Lord Bracken's ledger, the late Lord Bracken, in his possessions.
I hold it up and say, aha, look at this. This is what they call evidence. We definitely got our guy.
Another thing we have to carry back with us.
It's foldable.
Be that as it may, does it have a leather cover we could eat? That's more my concern at this moment.
Here's what I was thinking. Sister Raina, I've not checked the body. Have you, when he was beast bitten, and he was in his crab form, and we killed him, did he transform back? His head's half transformed. I was wondering if maybe there were some other parts that were still crab in nature.
The answer is yes.
Well, you can eat the crab person or the rest of him if you want to, but he definitely didn't eat himself, and he ate something. There must be something around here. But yes, if we don't find that, we might resort to that.
If you think that eating his transformed flesh will absolve you of cannibalism, I do not share your confidence.
I'll have to check the rules on that one. I'll try to see if I can remember something about it.
It's just a technicality.
Are you actually trying to remember if this is like a taboo thing or not?
No, I think my center knows that it is.
Yeah, it is indeed taboo. The beast bitten, though they are frequently outcasts, they are nevertheless folk of the realm. So, good. Horrigus, by the time you finish your ritual, the sun is well down behind the trees, and the sky has taken on a bluish tones of blue and pink. And there are the little trail of stone pile markers as well. Do you particularly focus on those in your preparations? As well as the footprints?
I think I might make a few extra preparations there and cast the unfall ritual using my rest on a few marbles, so that if anyone steps on them, they unfall, and then just lay a couple on the path, and then just say, someone is visiting this place. I don't like it, and this is very sinister. And he just mutters to himself and starts like using his staff to like enchant marbles.
Very good, very good. Well, it's getting to be nighttime, and Horrigus, you can rejoin the group in the cabin if you wish. It's quite cold now at this point. The night is surprisingly still, not too much wind, and so you can hear almost anything outside. The fire is keeping you warm, especially in this small space. There is a bed with a straw mattress and a pillow. Suppose you could take turns on that. And it probably feels good after weeks of hard traveling to press your cold, partially frostbitten feet into this rather plush rug in the back room. So let's just have that scene.
Arno was warming himself by the fire and looking around sullenly for any signs of any kind of root cellar or disturbed earth, if it's an earthen floor, or any way of anywhere where sort of winter provisions might have been hidden.
It is in fact a wood plank floor. It's a surprisingly well-made cabin, or it would have been well-constructed cabin when it was made, although it's a little, sort of faded and deteriorated now. But you can make a hunt roll though. How exactly are you searching besides just looking at the floors?
Seeing if there are any seams or, signs of a sort of a trapdoor or a hatch, or any loose planks that are not nailed at the ends, that kind of thing.
Yeah, make a hunt roll.
A 4.
Take your token. The quality of your footsteps changes when you're on the rug. What felt like solid ground beneath, or at least solid unshifting planks, has a certain hollowness to it when you're over the rug.
You 3. I may have found something here. Anna will start to pull the rug aside.
You pull the rug aside and you do find a trapdoor. And here's the terrible thing. There's a place to put a chain and lock on the outside of the trapdoor, but there's nothing there. So it looks like the trapdoor can be opened. But when you pull, you discover that the trapdoor is locked from the other side.
I get down to the floor and say, hello? Is anyone down there?
Make a hunt roll.
Got a 5.
There's no response. But for just a brief moment, you hear something down there shift. Just a slight shift, slight scuffle, and then it stops. There's something down there.
Oh no, what kind of tracks did you see outside? Was it animal or human?
From the description, I understood them to be barefoot.
They were human.
tracks.
They were human footprints. Yeah.
Barefooted human? No human's gonna be barefoot out there in this coldness.
Nobody's going to be out in that coldness without exploding.
It could be another beast bitten. If they're transformed back into human form before returning to the cabin. That's why I told you to be careful, Lysander.
Could be a mannequin.
Sister Rena, what are you doing right now?
I think Sister Rena is. I think she's actually still, because they seem to have taken over looking for this. So I think she's sitting in a corner and kind of having a look at this ledger that we found, just browsing through it.
The ledger is very interesting. It has all the sorts of, well, make a hunt roll, since you're inquiring.
Five.
Take your token. The ledger is interesting. It has all sorts of, normal sorts of things you might expect in a noble household entries. But there are other entries that are very intriguing indeed. And you start to put together you start to put together that Lord Bracken was doing business with a cult called the Cult of the True Dawn. If any of you has a religious background, you'll know what the Cult of the True Dawn is.
Well, Sister Rena probably then will have directly kind of honed into that.
That's true. The Cult of the True Dawn, you may not know much about them, but what you do know about them is that they are an apocalyptic cult. They believe that the world is going to end. In short, it's more complicated than that, and they intend to bring it about. And Lord Bracken doing business with them would be very, very looked down upon by Amberet, by other Lavasti lords. It would be bad news. So, what are the rest of you doing right now?
Argus gonna fish around in his pack and say, "I knew I brought you for a reason," and pull out a padlock and key. I'm using my sort of wild cards from my backpack for that, and say, "Yes, my friend, you'll keep us safe." And I'm gonna inscribe a little rune on it to sort of give it some extra geomantic protection. And then I'm gonna snap it on the other side of the door and say, "You can go back under the carpet now, my friend," and throw the carpet back and say, "I'm not looking there again. There's far too much scratching in this house, this cabin, for my liking."
So boiled crab it is then.
If you are willing
Says
to
Sister Rena from the.
walk back all the way to Fort Duran on an empty stomach or a guest, then that's your own decision. But there may be food down there. We should at least look.
"Oh, look at me, Mr. Stab the Chrysalis before finding out what's going on. Mr. Oh, these piles of stones look fun.
Oh,
I
yeah,
guarantee you the death waits in that cellar. There's scratching. 12 individual scratchings."
Well, we haven't seen 12, and there's only one set of footprints. And let me just try to talk to whoever's down there and use reassuring tones. Hello, we only came here for Sindhu. We're only here for the bounty. We're not here to cause any trouble. So you're welcome to come on up.
Still reply.
You're probably talking to rats, Lysander. The footprints could have been Sindhu's, for all we know.
That's a good point.
There's no reply when you call on the other side of the trapdoor.
Arno will get down on his hands and knees and put his ear to the trapdoor and see if he can hear the scratching. Is there any sign that the scratching is coming from down there, or is it in a different part of the ground?
I mean, if the basement space is big enough, it's theoretically you could have heard it coming from outside the cabin where you heard it. In the meantime, though, Horrorguest, someone has quite ably navigated your perimeter. You hear a feverish knocking on the front door of the cabin. Hello, is someone in there? I saw smoke from the chimney.
And Hargus will put his finger to his mouth and say, "If they got through the boards, I guarantee you that is not a person."
Let's hide.
Perhaps you should have put your lock on that door instead of on the trap door.
What Arno said.
Hello, it's very, very cold. I've been separated from my traveling party. Please, I just need shelter for the evening.
There's no hiding, Lysander. They can see the smoke of the fire. It's obvious we're in here.
It's a big bed.
Arno will call out, Who are you?
My name is Oren. I have food to share.
Sounds like a trap.
Not a person.
It sounds like a trap, but if there's food to bait the trap, perhaps we can spring it and come away with something to eat.
Now you're thinking one of us needs to go out the window and circle around. The other window, the opposite window. This is a job for a librarian.
Are you going to do that? Are you going to attempt to?
Oh yeah, I'm going to slip out. Oh, what do I need to avoid stepping on or a guest?
It's only tuned to like super magical influences. So if you don't cast any rituals, you'll be fine.
Hand me my wig. I'm going to go out. I'll circle around. And when you hear me say like, "Have at you," come through the front door, and I'll be ready.
I think this is probably a risk roll, I suppose. Even though we don't quite understand the nature of what's on the other side of the door. It just sounds like a young man. How does the risk roll go? Okay, with stat stakes, and we all have to say what could go wrong, right? Yeah. So everybody else, what could go wrong?
There is something else outside, not at the door, that's ready for Lysander to come out the window, or the person at the door was a distraction and something was already trying to come in the window while we're distracted by the person at the door.
Their presence here could be the thing that allows whatever's in the cellar to break through.
I think you immediately encounter very clear evidence that you made the wrong decision by leaving the cabin. Like you see something, like there's one of those shocking sort of fade to black moments.
I don't have anything to add. I like those are all interesting options. Let's talk about your dice, Lysander. What dice might you have?
I'm going to go with stealth.
Yeah, that sounds great. You got one light die. Let's talk about devil's bargains. Everyone please make a devil's bargain if you can think of one.
I would say whoever that person out there is someone that either that someone in the group knows, have met before.
That's interesting.
I was going to say that no matter what, Lysander does fall foul of one of Horrorgest's wards by going outside.
I think that could be fun. I like that one. I'm gonna second that one.
I think no matter what, you see that there's other things waiting just beyond the wards. Like you can see their eyes, you can see they're all just very politely waiting in the shadows.
Some interesting choices, Lysander.
I'm gonna go with that one. I like that one. That there's all kinds of eyes in the perimeter of the forest that I can see.
Go ahead and roll. I think it's just a 2 light dice for now. It's not a dark die yet. So risk 2. A 4, you'll succeed. There's a bit of a complication. The complication is more, I think, like I'm just going to kind of make the scene a little bit more puzzling for you. You sneak out the window and you are circling around. You will notice straight away sets of glowing eyes in the tree line, concentrated most especially near where that last little pile of standing rocks is. You will also notice leaning up against the side of the house, and it's unclear when it got put there. Might have always been there. But there is a large maul, like a big hammer, and it has caked blood on it. but you otherwise manage to get around to the front. And indeed, you do see a young man wrapped in a cloak and sort of tattered clothing, wearing no shoes, looking very cold. But he does have a pack with him that looks full. What do you do?
I clear my throat and say, what was your name again?
He says, "Oh, my name's Oran. Please, I just want to warm myself by the fire, just for the evening. I'll be gone first light of morning."
And as Lysander says that, Arnau will open the door and be ready to, so that we have him surrounded if need be.
Then you should be our guest. Go ahead and proceed, but keep your hands where we can see them.
Oh, thank you, thank you. I have no weapons. And he comes in, and as soon as he steps through the threshold of the cabin, yes, he was barefoot. As soon as he steps through the threshold of the cabin, the atmosphere lightens significantly. Everyone, as a little paint the scene, describe how the atmosphere just feels lighter, less tense, less scary.
I think
In the rafters are some, oh, go ahead, Rob.
I was just going to say there's almost an aroma of the food in his pack that we can smell. You know, our senses are so highly tuned because we're so hungry that there's just an inviting smell coming from his backpack.
I think it feels like it's almost gotten like 2-3 degrees warmer.
I'm going to say up in the rafters is some type of wind chime that we haven't noticed really, but when the door opened, the wind blew the wind chime and makes kind of a tinkling, like pleasant little sound.
I think he just kind of, it's like everything had one of those sort of yellowish filters that all the Hollywood films have now, but then it all gets turned off and it's kind of like full color, like the color gradient seems to shift.
It's like a Steven Soderbergh movie in the beginning. Good.
I would like to ask you, Aaron, is that your hammer propped up against the wall out there?
It's like, oh, I didn't notice a hammer. I'm sorry, I didn't know it. It's not mine.
Arno, it's a quite large hammer that looks like it's been well used recently.
I'll take a look.
Why don't you
Okay.
try and pick it up?
Yeah, good luck picking it up.
Well, if it's a large maul, I'm assuming it could just be for splitting wood or something.
That's true. It's true. Maybe there's a technicality here you can get away with, right? Sister Rita, what are you doing right now?
I think listening to whatever is being said, if there's anything that I might recognize or so from anything in the ledger or anything out of place or anything like that.
I think you've learned all you can learn as far as the ledger goes. Arno, you can go out and pick up the maul as long as you don't use it for combat purposes. But what else do you do when you go out there with it?
I'm curious to see it. You know, is it alongside a pile of firewood or is it just discarded?
Just leaning against the.
So it looks like it was obviously placed there carefully, or
possibly, yeah.
Maybe that's where it's kept. Yeah, I think given that this is something that could be used as a weapon, and particularly as a weapon for breaking through the door from the outside, it would be safer for all of us if this thing was inside with us. So I'll just drag it. Even if I can't lift it, I think I'll drag it along the ground and into the hut. If if nothing else, we could also use it to break into the cellar.
You're good to go there, so you can bring it in, no problem. The young man, Oran, is warming himself by the fire. He has a head of thick golden hair, and he looks surprisingly tan and healthy. And of course, he wasn't wearing any shoes. And he's warming himself by the fire, and he says, "Thank you so much. You're very kind. I was with my family, and we were accosted on the road down the hill, and I ran, and I've been wandering in the forest for the better part of a day. I was very lucky to find this place."
I think Haraga's going to sit next to him and just stare at him unnervingly and start doing things that are like Turing test things, like say, "Tell me, do you like music?" and start ringing the Fae bells and see what he does, and then be like, "I'm just going to look at you. My eyes are so tired these days. I have to put in my spectacle," and put in his mirror ball eye and I'll look at him and say, "Ooh," and just keep trying to like get him to admit that he's not a person.
Make a hunt roll.
Okay, I'm gonna use my sort of attunement to sort of try and
Or
detect
bells.
him.
The bells too, probably.
Yeah, the bells. Yeah, be more appropriate. 5.
Take your token. He's not affected by the bells at all, so he's probably not Fae. He does comment. He says, "Those make a very unusual sound, don't they? And you have a very unusual countenance, sir."
Well, that's what a wasting geomantic disease will do for you. Tell me, what's hiding inside of you that I should know about, young man?
He says, "Oh, nothing at all. Nothing. I just, well, I was just, I suppose I'm a coward because I ran. There's that."
What was it you were running from again?
Bandits on the road.
How many of them were there?
I didn't take time to count. I did see one of them strike down my mother and my sister. It curdled my blood to see such violence. And like I said, I just ran.
Here's the thing, Oren. Me and my companions, we've seen some things out here in the wilds, and so now we can't sleep tonight with you being here unless we're sleeping in shifts and whatnot. So it might be good to put the food out on the table to see if this is all going to be.
Oh, the food. Yes, the food. Of course. I'm perfectly happy to share what I have with you. And he has his pack, and he undoes his pack, and he pulls out quite a spread. There's cheese wrapped in wax paper. There is some bread. There are some pieces of dried fish, dried meat, and even a bundle of grapes that is surprisingly well preserved by the cold. He says, "It's not much, but by the look of you all, it's probably the best you've seen in some time."
Which is why we cannot eat it. This is clearly a trap.
says, "Oh, I assure you, there's no trap. I just want to get in from the cold for the night, and I'm happy to share with you whatever I have, if that's my price for doing so."
I will share food with you.
And he goes around asking your names. He says, "And what is your name, sir?"
I'm Arno.
Arno.
Where were you traveling from?
Arno, that's interesting. It's almost it's an anagram of my own name, isn't it?
Possibly. I'm not sure I'd be confident writing your name.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
I was wondering where you were traveling from and to.
Well, my family, we have a quite productive estate in the Lavasti countryside, and we were traveling from Ambaret. We were there for some sort of symposium, I don't know, some of my father's business, and we were accosted on the road, and I ran and ran, and I ended up here. Truth be told, I sort of lost track of how long I'd been wandering. At one point, I woke up in the snow. I think I must have passed out for quite a while. It feels good to be by the fire now.
I'm going to think about with my myths role. This sounds like a story that I might have heard of a stranger in the night. I'm just going to see if I can remember something.
Yeah.
Like if there's a ghost story that might be something.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Make a hunt roll.
I think that's the third time I've had 2 3s.
It's been a bit, yeah. He says, you don't recall anything in particular. He says, "Oh, what's over there?" And he points at the rug, which has a significant bulge over it because of Horagest's lock. And he says, "It looks like," and he gets up and just walks over there. He says, "Oh, I thought it might be a rat or something." He kind of kicks it with his foot. It appears to be something hard.
If it was a rat, we'd have eaten it.
How dreadful. He kicks over the rug to show the trapdoor. He's like, "Oh, look, a secret."
Could we like cash in our tokens now, group, to unmask what's going on here? Because I think we've got enough between us.
I'll throw in one.
I can give one.
Sure.
The set goal is to safely pass the night. He says, "I do wonder what's down here. Perhaps
I think sister, sorry, good.
perhaps one of you has some sort of skill in lock picking and could undo this lock, and we could see what's down there. There might be more food provisions."
That was
I
my
think Sister Rena.
thought, but Horagest seems to think it was dangerous and locked it again.
"Oh, this is your lock."
I think Sister Rena says something like, whatever is down there, I think we should just be thankful that this person came in here with all the food and just safely spent the night. Leave down whatever is down there. Don't you think?
I say again that it would be madness for us to leave this place without at least looking down there. We have a long journey ahead of us.
I myself am very, very interested in what's down there. The curiosity is practically gnawing at me.
I think Horagast's gonna look him in the eye and start writing another ritual on the trapdoor and say, "Nobody is going down that trapdoor. Not tonight, not ever. I don't want to be eaten. Someone is going to try and eat me, and this is my insurance.
I love it. Let's take 5. Some of you are eating Oren's food. You're all invited to. And you are warming yourself by the fire. Did you spend your 3 tokens? Then the night will pass by safely. But I do want to roleplay it a little bit, even though it will be fundamentally safe. You've dragged in the mall, and there are eyes glowing in the woods around the cabin. I think eventually Oren removes his waterlogged clothes in order to warm them by the fire, to dry them by the fire. And he is very lovely indeed. Very smooth golden skin. He's quite petite. And he keeps looking at the trapdoor. He says, I sure wish I knew what was down there. I think I might sleep better knowing that there was nothing down there that could be dangerous.
We're not opening the door. We're gonna leave that shut tonight. We're gonna deal with one problem at a time.
Says, no,
I'm more
that's
curious
fine.
why it was locked on the other side. It seems
It was
whatever's
locked on the
down
other
there was
side.
trying to. Yes, it seems whatever was down there was possibly trying to keep Sindhu out.
Who is Sindhu?
You know, white hair, crab. You know, hard to miss.
He chuckles and says, you are all very, very strange people.
He is still fighting about the door, Sister Rena says, and I think she just sits down on the carpet on the spot where the door is below her then. It's like,
This whole time, Sister Raina, I've been trying to think of how I can fashion that carpet into some kind of cloak, but I guess sitting on it's pretty good.
Are you going to be setting a watch tonight?
Definitely. Yes, we're not going to let Oren be awake when none of us are.
Who's going to get to sleep in the bed?
I think Sister Raina should.
I think Sister Rena is so used to like wooden, you know, like very uncomfortable cells in the cluster and everything. She will refuse.
And I suggest we do a double watch where there's always 2 of us. And so I will gladly take both of those watches.
So you propose to stay awake all night, Lysander? And
I slept in yesterday.
if we're to break camp and start our journey back tomorrow, you need to be at least somewhat rested. I will take a shift on watch, of course.
Who's on first watch? We only need 2 to get to the morning.
Yeah. Okay.
So Sister Rena and Lysander are both going to stay on watch for the first part of the night. Horagust, are you taking the bed then?
Since someone has to take the bed, I think Horagast is gonna groan and he's gonna like just keep staring at the carpet and say, if anyone goes near that carpet, they're gonna regret it.
Arnau, as you're laying down on the floor near the fire to get some sleep, Oron kneels down next to you, and he is a very, very skinny thing. And he says, "Would you mind terribly if I pressed up against you for warmth?"
Here, take this. And I will give him one of his blankets that he's got himself wrapped in.
He says, "Oh, thank you." And he still does kind of like bed down next to you. And he rolls up, he takes his own backpack and rolls it up under his head to use as a pillow. Arnau, Oron has a very pleasant smell. What does he smell like?
Honey.
The first watch is unremarkable. Nothing happens. Oron sleeps. Arnau sleeps. Horagast, I assume, sleeps. Are you doing anything else while you're on watch?
I'd inspect the food a lot closer and try to figure out where he hid the poison.
I will tell you, so I don't need a roll since you'll have all night. The food, what's left of it, is perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with it.
I'll be nibbling on some of that and keep my back against the door.
Sister Rena, what are you doing during watch?
I think continue reading the ledger.
I think you'll discover that this ledger, you will come to the conclusion that this ledger contains, it is evidence of quite serious criminal behavior on behalf of Lord Bracken. The ledger itself would be worth 1 gold if sold to someone in Amberette in authority, or possibly more sold back to the Brackens. Right, so second watch, Oron wakes up, says, I can relieve you, Lysander. I don't mind standing watch."
Okay, but the first rule of second watch is no talking and avoid direct eye contact with others on the watch. And if you hear something, just kind of make a little hiss sound. That's what I do.
Says, "Okay." And he pulls the blanket closer over his shoulders as he sits by the fire. Is anyone taking second watch with Oron?
Are we splitting the night into 3 watches?
Just 2.
Just 2.
No. Lysander's too nervous to sleep.
Lysander, you need to rest. And Arnau goes in and kicks Horagast's feet in the bed. Your turn.
They feel kind of like heavy, like they're sort of partially made of rock, I think. And Horagast will just sit up and just come and sit and stare at Oren and say, "Tell me, boy, tell me about yourself. Are you a human kind of individual?"
With Horagast on the case, I feel a little bit better, so I will. I'll sleep on the bed, unless Sister Raina wanted it.
Oran says, "You do say the most unusual things, Mr. Horrorguest." And he just sort of goes back to twiddling his thumbs by the fire. I do wonder, though, what is beneath that trapdoor.
When the morning comes, we will investigate. For now, I'm more concerned with what lies outside.
All right, I will trust you and your instincts on this. I have lived a sheltered life. I don't know what it's like to be out in the wilderness or on the road. I had plenty of people back in my father's home to look after my needs. So I cannot speak with any sort of authority at all on how one should spend nights like this.
In my experience, it's best to take what rest you can and hope the night goes quietly.
And the night does go quietly. There is no one sets off Horrorguest's rune traps. Oran does a bad job at watch, falling asleep by the fire. And there aren't even any more sounds coming up from the trapdoor. The next morning, those of you who had dozed off, next morning, those of you who were asleep are awakened by the front door to the cabin swinging open. And Oran is there, and he has another backpack in his hands. He's also wearing Sindhu's second set of clothing and Sindhu's second set of boots. They are very ill-fitting because Oran is very, very small compared to Sindhu. But he comes in and he says, "Look what I found." And he sets down this other backpack. He says, I was awake and I just thought I would go just perhaps forage some berries or something in the woods, and I found this tangled up in a tree.
Is this one of your parties?
No, I don't know who it is, but look inside. And he opens it up, and inside there are several cured sausages, a wedge of
Let
cheese.
me see this pack.
He hands it to you.
I think Sister Rena's gonna look whether there's any kind of dried blood or anything on it, or anything that looks
Make a
like
roll.
it can struggle or something. So I guess forensic applies here.
Yeah, make a hunt roll.
2.
Yes. You notice little spatters of blood on the canvas of the backpack. Still a little wet. He says, there's cheese and there's cured meats and there's a dried fish and there's even like a small loaf of bread. Oh, I don't know anything about blood, and there's a loaf of bread, and he's sort of like,
I think I'm gonna just shove it in his face, like the blood. Can you see the blood? It's still warm, still wet. Where did you get this from?
I told you I found it in a tree. It looked like it had been discarded hastily.
No
They don't
buddies.
have they don't grow, backpacks don't grow on trees. They don't.
Well, and he says, well, I'm happy to keep this for myself, of course, since I suspect we'll be marching out our separate ways today.
When you're not going anywhere before we find out whose blood this is.
And he says, all right. And he just sort of like goes and sits in the corner of the room. He says, with this newfound bounty, perhaps we should stay here another night, get our strength up, huh?
I think it's best if we start moving sooner rather than later. We have a long way to cover and only so much food. Nevertheless, Sister Raina's question stands. Who did you take this from, Oren?
He claims to, he sticks by his story.
Could not possibly be more suspicious.
Here's what's going to happen. We will take the food from this pack and we will leave to make our way back to Fort Durin. And you, Oren, will stay here.
At this point, you will all be quite aware of the wind picking up very, very heavily. The trees are starting to bend, and visibility is getting bad out there. The sky is whitening with snow. There's a blizzard rolling in. Oren will say, it looks like I have the better of those two options.
I think Horagast is just going to look outside and say, of course, there's a storm. There's nothing at all suspicious about this at all. And of course, you just coincidentally find this blood-soaked bag. And of course, you just, out of curiosity, want to open the padlock. Who are you? What are you? You are not a person.
And he sort of like crawls back from you, a look of fear in his face. And he says, I'm afraid you misunderstand me. I don't know what I've done. I can tell that you all must have experienced some very, very terrible things to be so unkind and unforgiving towards your fellow man. But I promise you, I assure you, I have no ulterior motives. I don't even have a weapon. How could I bring you harm?
See, we're bounty hunters on this day, and we have a head to bag, right? This isn't like we're not like traveling merchants. We're treasure hunters, and the way that we stay alive is to be cautious, be bold, and wary of these coincidental gifts.
We assume everyone's terrible, says Horagast sort of sarcastically.
Because we know Horagast is terrible.
I am terrible. You should remember that, Oren. You should remember that I'm terrible.
There's a blizzard fully well setting in at this point. What do you all do?
Onel slams the door in disgust. And says, well, it looks like we are staying here a little longer after all. How convenient for you, Oren.
And he just shakes his head with a sort of like a sadness. If you're staying in the cabin, the new set goal is to pass the night safely.
We're not staying in again. We're gonna make some skis or snowshoes. I saw a drawing once of some snowshoes, and we may be able to fashion those and head out into the storm.
If you head out into the storm, the set goal is safely navigate the blizzard. So, Sister Raina, you've been very quiet.
So did we already go out into the storm?
No, I think
No, I
there's
think
just
we're on the
discussion
we're on the
ongoing.
coast. Yeah, I think so. So I think probably someone has opened the cabin door to kind of tell us to go out there, and I think Sister Rena is kind of looking back and forth. It's like, I really don't know. Both of these things don't sound too good. You have been in these parts longer than I. What do you suggest? She looks at the other tree.
If we try and go anywhere in this storm, we're as good as dead. We have no choice. However, since there is one among us who we certainly suspect of some treachery, I suggest we restrain him.
And Oren says, but I brought you food for the day. You should be thanking me.
I can thank you and still be wary of you.
I think we should go at least as far as he claims that he found this pack.
It wasn't far from here, just inside the tree line.
I think a wonderful plan of action is to do the opposite of whatever he says.
Same tree line where Lysander saw eyes. Not last night. In this storm, we could easily become separated from one another. This is madness. We can investigate when the storm has died down.
We could tie ourselves together with rope and try to backtrack which way we came back down to the road before we saw this cabin. For all we know, this snowstorm is centered on the cabin.
Both of these ideas are terrible. Is there another option, a third option?
Yes, go down into the cellar. That's the third option.
That's what he wants. What did I tell you about? Do the opposite to what he says.
I'm following your logic. I'm following it. I'm following it.
I think you guys, all of you are talking too much, and I think Sister Rena wants to go out to the tree line to see where, if there's anybody or anything that was left there where the pack was found.
You'll have to hurry before the storm gets too bad. Which direction are you going? The obvious one is the stone pile path, but perhaps somewhere else.
I think actually kind of the other, like around the cabin, the opposite side of the door, behind the cabin.
That's the general direction of the stone pile. So
Okay, so it goes, yeah, okay, all right, yeah.
make a hunt roll.
Two.
I'll take over for a bit. You follow these little trail of stone piles. There are several more spaced out roughly evenly going into the tree line. And they end in a circle of standing stones. Standing stones that are each about between 4 and 6 feet high, roughly, in a circle, about a dozen. And the stones are all carved with runes. But the wind is whipping up pretty badly at this point, Sister Rena. You won't have time to interpret what the runes say. Not unless you have some special way of protecting yourself from the elements.
I don't think so. Basically, I think what Sister Rena kind of ignores all of that. She wants to see whether there's any corpse or body anywhere to be seen. and I think that's kind of her goal, to survey the scene there and then return as quickly as possible to the cabin.
Not at a glance, but yeah. Back in the cabin, Oren says, so you're going to tie me up?
I know it's cliche, but you've kind of left us no choice. You're the most suspicious individual I've ever encountered.
I just think we misunderstand each other.
As long as one of you has, why we're not cutting your throat right now, Oren.
As long as one of you has like rope or chains or something from your backpack equipment, you can tie him up.
I'm happy to take some rope from my backpack equipment.
I have some. If you hadn't already marked it, I can use mine. Did you already have it?
No, I did not. So yeah, let's use yours.
Yeah, it's knotted for easy climbing. We'll have to take some of those knots out.
So you can tie him up. Do you tie him to something or just like tie his hands behind his back or what?
I think to a chair, right?
Or the foot of the bed, something, yeah.
I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to try and convince the cocoon at the end of the Illithan staff to spin like a cocoon around him so that he can't move.
I don't know if that's going to work, but we might.
Yeah, I'll try
we
though,
might
but
see.
it won't work. I'll get frustrated and throw my stuff on the floor and say, what's the point of Fey magic if it doesn't spin a cocoon?
You're not Fey. You're not Fey.
And Oren says, you are all very strange individuals. Sister Raina, you're back. Storm is quite heavy now at this point. It would be very tough to go out without having to deal with the elements in a bad way.
There's nothing out there, no one, or nothing that he might have heard. I don't know where that blood comes from. But the storm is very strong now. I think we have to stay here.
So now that he's tied up, what about the attic? I mean, sorry, the cellar, fellas. What do you think?
I think it would be foolish to leave this cellar uninvestigated. There could be enough food down there to get us safely back home.
Can you let me sense the ground and see if I can figure out the origin of the 12 unique scratching noises first? It will take a while, but if you insist on going down there.
Yes, and I say we don't eat the meat until we identify what kind of meat it is. Since you guys have already convinced me the errors of cannibalism, and just go with the cheese and the bread.
If you wish to use your instincts to search for rats, Horrigus, be my guest. This storm has taken all the haste out of my plans for the day.
I know your preference is for stabbing chrysalises with your tiny dagger with your white hands, but let me tell you, Arno, that is not rats. I know rats, not rats.
If we don't look soon, whatever is down in that cellar will be eaten by the time we open it.
Clearing the rug and getting them all and rolling up my sleeves.
Oh, let's talk about the mall. You can't find it.
Man. Here's what I'm thinking. The mall, which had blood on it, is now the backpack. If we can somehow change the backpack back to the mall, that would help. Any way you can assist with that, Oren?
Think of a simpler explanation. Oren here took the mall, killed someone with it, and took their backpack.
Do I look like I could lift that thing, especially to kill someone with it?
One time we saw this giant centipede that had legs made out of human arms with a giant mouth and a statue for a body. So look,
I fear I have wandered into a madhouse.
I saw a giant made out of 100 corpses once. You don't scare me. I've seen weirder things than you before breakfast, kid.
And yet I am the one they fear. And truly it should be the opposite.
yes, yeah, yeah.
Where is the mall, Oren?
I don't know. I have no idea. I didn't notice it missing, but I had nothing to do with it. It was huge. I couldn't have carried that. Not for any length of time.
Arno would like to look for, I mean, whether there's any sign in the storm now, but any sign of Oren's tracks
Storm is
leaving
far too thick at this point. The snow would have blown over everything. Sister Raina, you didn't tell the group about the standing stones?
I think not yet. I think yet. There's really nothing out there, nothing but these stones with the runes on them and all of that. But I don't know. But I guess we're stuck here for one more night.
Stones with runes on them is new information.
Where are they?
Well, I saw them right behind the cabin.
Okay, we take what's left of the rope. We tie it to probably me and Horgest, or maybe Arno and Horgest, and let Horgest maybe go check out these runes.
Well, I do know about rocks. You've cussed me to type, Lysander. This is better than when people ask me to look at birds.
Trust me, people always ask me to look at books. Come on, it comes with the territory.
But you do like books, Lysander. That's well. Oh, fine. I'll go look at your rocks in the snow. Tie a rope to me. Watch that this little individual doesn't break out of his ropes and rip off the padlock with his crazed, not human hands.
60 feet of rope is not nearly enough to get to the standing stones.
No, I just mean tie it to whoever's going with him so they don't get separated.
Oh, I
Take
see.
it to 60 feet
As a
away.
way of like navigating safely, so you at least stay together. Also, who's going with Horgest?
I'll go, or Arno, if you'd like to go.
I will go. Someone needs to keep Horgest in line.
I think this is a risk roll to safely reach the standing stones, which are a little ways into the woods, and there is a blizzard blowing. I think the use of the rope will justify the first light die, but let's first talk about what could go wrong here. And I think it's going to be a roll for Horgest ultimately. So everybody but James should speak here if they have an idea.
Horgest and Arno get separated, and Horgest is just lost.
They both get lost.
Something appears out of the blizzard.
Yeah, I like that. I think maybe something dangerous and deadly you run into in the blizzard. You have one light die, Horgest. Devil's bargains. I'll make my offer. No matter what, you meet the owner of the mall.
No matter what, the standing stones are activated.
No matter what, while Horgest and I are away, Oren slips his bonds.
These are all great.
3 options. Horgest, what do you think?
You know what? Since they're not mutually exclusive and they're all interesting, I think I'm going to take all of them. Like, I meet, the standing stones activate. I meet the owner of the mall in the standing stones, and while we're away, are escapes. So I know I get the 1 dice, but they're all narratively interesting, so I'll take the lot.
Very well, very well. 2 light, and I think because you're navigating a deadly blizzard, it's going to be 1 dark.
Oh yeah.
You can take a help from Arnau if you end up needing it.
I got a dark 5, so
Yeah, your ruin goes up, but you will succeed. The complication is going to be you're going to have to make some other dangerous preparation to actually read what the runes say. If you're okay with that, then press forward. Otherwise, if you can justify a help die, by all means, do so.
I'll accept it if it's narratively interesting. I mean, I imagine we could probably do better than a 5 if you have any ideas.
Yeah, I was thinking we would have taken some portion of Lysander's rope with us to keep us tied together, and use that to just ensure we don't get lost from each other while we navigate our way to the.
I mean, I think that's understood, but like, what's I mean, that was the sort of.
Oh, sorry, we're talking about decoding the.
No, this is just like, how are you helping Arnau?
Arno's got athletics. Don't you have athletics?
Mhm. Yeah.
So just say how you're putting yourself at risk then to help with the decode, with reaching the runes and Horus being able to read them or whatever.
I think just Arnau is the one using his physical strength to push his way through the snow, moving at enabling us to move faster than if Horus was doing it by himself, because Arnau can just kind of burrow a path through the deeper parts of the snow and drag Horus behind him.
I love it. Roll weak to get a light die. It does not help, and it matches the dark die, so your rune's going up. But give us the scene, Horus. You will reach the standing stones. What does it look like?
I think basically I'm going to take this as a bit of a redemptive moment that we have to keep pulling each other up and saying, keep going. And basically, like, we realize that even though like we're sort of really pissed off at each other, we're still like comrades, and we managed to get there through the sort of the blizzard and I think Haragast, like, my ruin increase means that as we sort of stumble into the standing stones, I think Haragast has this horrible feeling that his left foot is heavier than it should be, and he has this distinct like feeling that what was maybe frostbite to start with is now, he thinks that at least part of his foot has turned to stone inside his boot from the exertion. But they sort of stumble, and I think maybe there's a sort of susurrus of sound and storm as we sort of stumble and like fall. There's not even any snow inside the stones. We just sort of fall into the circle of the stones, like gasping and covered in snow and frost and like clinging to each other.
Yeah, I think.
How is it going for you, Arnau?
Yeah, Arnau was just so covered in snow because he's kind of pushing his way through a drift and trying to drag Horus behind him as best he can, but and it means that his, all his clothes get completely soaked and start to refreeze, and he's really struggling with the cold. And also, Horus seems to be weirdly heavier and harder to pull than he thought should be the case.
Let's cut back to the cabin for a moment. Lysander, Sister Rena, you will notice at a certain point that Orin is no longer there. What do you do?
Tricksy little guy. I checked to see if the hatch is open, if the lock's still there.
It is still locked, yeah.
I think Sister Rena was again sitting in the corner reading the ledger, and she kind of jumps up and goes over to the door, opens it to see, like, sees outside if she can see him or if there's anything to be seen from the cabin door.
Make a hunt roll.
4.
Take your token. You see something in the snow. You glimpse it just occasionally through the blinding white. But it is a figure, quite tall, about 8 feet tall, dressed in heavy black furs and with a battered helm, and with no apparent facial features under the helm, just a pair of glowing eyes. And this figure is dragging the maul in the snow, making a patrol, seemingly, around the cabin. That is 2 devil's bargains met, and let's cut back over to the 3rd. You manage to get to these standing runes, and the area around the standing rocks, or the standing rocks rather, is actually quite calm from the blizzard. You can step into the circles and the blizzard doesn't really seem to penetrate the circle of stones. And the runes themselves are glowing with golden light. If either of you has some sort of just relevant skill that would allow you to read these runes, because they are in a sort of strange language, I'll just tell you what it is for free. Otherwise, I need some die rolls.
I have rituals.
That's pretty close. Arnaud, do you have anything?
No, Arnell is not not a great scholar.
I also have
Rituals
a geomantic miscellany that we've already shown has quite a lot of runes in it as well.
Oh, that's actually pretty good. I like that because these runes are particularly relevant. They are sort of like connected to, well, you'll see why in a minute, but they're connected to a sort of like a god of the earth, of the land. And so this might help you decipher the runes. I don't need a roll. The runes say, "We raise these stones in the hopes they might draw the attention of the golden youth we worship, the god known as he who walks among stones. We pray this henge is pleasing to him so that we might bask in his radiance and lay kisses upon his golden feet."
Does that sound like anyone to you? I know. Told you, not a person. After he's finished reciting it, says, not a person, an ancient god of the ground.
Then perhaps we should have treated him more kindly.
Guarantee you, I know. Just because he's God doesn't mean he doesn't want to kill us.
Of course, but the angrier we make him, the more likely that possibility becomes.
That's how cults start, I know. You start thinking like that, next minute you've got a cult.
I make it a firm policy to not anger powerful supernatural beings. That seems just more akin to common sense than a cult. I wasn't suggesting we start worshipping him.
Well, it's fair to say, I know, if I hadn't made the earth itself angry, I wouldn't be half stone. Geomancers are not perhaps the best authorities on not angering the ground, so I think I might be willing to concede that one to you. What do you suggest then, oh white-handed appeaser of gods?
I suggest, if we do not want this, he who walks among stones, to take Lysander and Sister Raina as sacrifice, that we make our way back to the cabin as quickly as we can.
I would like to pick up on that
Agreed.
scene. Sister Raina, I assume you point out this sentry, this tall, very tall figure dragging the maul in the snow in the blizzard to Lysander. Let's just have that scene.
I think Sister Rena kind of slowly closes the door and says, "We're not. There's something out there. Someone." It doesn't look good.
Is he going towards Horgas and Arno or away?
Was the figure walking towards us, towards the cabin? That's
if you watch it for a while, it's patrolling, it's circling the cabin.
oh, okay. So it's not actually kind of walking towards us, or okay. Well, it doesn't seem to want to come in here directly, but I'm not sure the others can come back here as long as it's out there, or at least we would have to find the right moment.
Okay. I'm gonna drag the bed, or at least the mattress, out into the front, and we're gonna set it on fire, like as a beacon. That's what I started
Quick
doing.
thinking. Okay, Sister Rena is gonna help.
Not the rug. The rug. We keep the rug.
I think that's a great plan. Horagust and Arnau, as long as you make your way directly back to the cabin, I think you can get to the cabin no problem, or at least without any more risk rolls. But if you're going to do something else, I need to know that too.
I think also because the ritual, the runes are still in place, even if they're buried beneath like a few feet of snow. So I assume Horagust could fairly easily use them to find the way back.
Oh, do you mean like the little standing piles of rocks?
No, I mean the ones I laid around the
Oh, that's right.
cabin.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, that would probably work as well. Yeah, getting back is not going to be any trouble, especially if they light that mattress on fire. When you arrive, you get pretty close to the cabin. You see the fire in the blizzard. You also see that tall figure slowly walking in a circle around the cabin, dragging them all. As long as you wait for it to pass, you can cut across and get to the cabin. But I am curious what you do, Arnau.
Arnau motions Horagust to get down and crouches behind whatever cover he can find and just peers at this thing, trying to figure out if he can tell what it is, whether it is human, just an unusual human, or whether it's something else altogether.
Would you like to make a hunt roll?
I suppose so. Yes, I'm just wondering what I can justify in the way of skills here to give me some kind of a chance. I guess tactics, perhaps, that I'm, trying to size this thing
I'll
up.
take that. Yeah. Take your token. You got a 4, so you can counter something terrible. The thing looks utterly inhuman. When you're occasionally able to glance inside the helm, you don't see any face. It's like a Nazgul kind of situation. And the terrible thing, that's not even the terrible thing. The terrible thing is at a certain point, it stops its patrol, raises the maul, and slams it against the ground. And you see a bit of earth fly up. And then it raises the maul again and slams it down. And you see bits of wood fly up. He's trying to get down into the basement.
Horagust, it looks like this basement is far larger than we imagined.
I have been trying to tell you all this for a while, but I don't think it's a basement. I think it's something
you are not
very
gonna be able to
bad.
You are not going to be able to hang out in this blizzard much longer. You need to get to the house.
Come quickly while that thing is trying to break into the ground. Let's get back and warn the others.
Lysander and Sister Rena, you will hear this sentry starting to crack the ball into the earth.
I think Sister Rena's gonna kind of step out the door again to look at the scene. Can she see the? Can she see the sentry?
Not from the door, but there's another window
Okay.
on the other side. You can look out that
Okay.
window. Yeah.
And can I also see the stones from here?
Yes, this is all happening in the back.
Okay. So does, like, from Sesterina's experience, does this sentry look like something that could be called a spirit?
Probably, yeah.
I think I'm gonna do a ritual and try to force the sentry back into the stones, or at least into the stones. Like, so the bottle ritual, force the spirit into an object.
Mm. James, Daniel, Rob, what could go wrong here?
He attracts the attention. Sister Anna, attracts the attention of the sentry, and it resists.
I think it makes he that walks between stones enraged, and we can tell.
Yeah, I was thinking, we're so distracted. We're so focused on this huge guardian patrolling that he who walks among the stones has the drop on us completely.
I think it could be that it doesn't work. You anger the sentry creature, and it just turns its attention on the cabin and goes toward the cabin. Let's talk about dice. Do you have a relevant skill or piece of equipment, Sister Rena?
Well, so let's see. I mean, I have. I have dueling. I'm not sure if that's a skill that fits. Probably not.
I don't think that's relevant.
Yeah.
Maybe something from your backpack would be.
Yeah.
Helpful.
Yeah, I think if I remember correctly, I have face paint, and I think that's what Serena used last time for the ritual as well.
That would put you down to one use of said face paint. But how does the face paint help with the spell?
I think Sisterina kind of draws on the window like some sort of like a diagram of like something over from the window where she can see the stones and the sentry, and kind of a connecting line with the paint.
Nice. That's one light die. Devil's Bargain, anyone?
No matter what, the ritual breaks the circle, and we realized that the circle was the circle that the guardian was walking was the circle of Horrorghast's runes, and then it's free to just like wail on us and come to the cabin.
Well, that can't work on a fail condition or on a success condition. It has to be able to work both ways, right?
Well, I mean, it's free no matter what. It's free to that. There's no more barrier. Basically, it replaces the.
I see what you're saying. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to say that no matter what. No matter what the food that Oren brought spoils.
I'm going to say no matter what, the snow turns into ice.
No matter what, Oren returns.
I think I'm gonna take the one that the food spoils, which means we probably will have to get into the basement anyway.
2 light die, 1 dark for the ritual. Risk 2-1. Take it away.
The 6 light.
6 light. Very good. Describe what it looks like when you trap the guardian into the stones.
I think I basically take the so I draw this on the window, And as soon as I connect the line, that kind of the kind of circle through which I see the guardian, it starts to get pulled in the direction of the stones, and it kind of drags them all and tries to even put them all on the ground, kind of catch some sort of root or a stone, anything, but it just can't resist it. And so this huge figure, and the others kind of see it being drawn, and it clashes against the stones. And I think it's actually like the whole armor and the helmet and everything that it wears kind of stays up against the stone, but whatever was inside of it is kind of sucked into the stone and disappears in the stone. So just whatever it was wearing is kind of standing against the stone on its own.
So great. Everyone can be rejoined in the cabin. And your set goal remains, or is again renewed, pass the night safely. Wait out the storm, and then get started again in the morning. Are you all hunkering down for the night, or are you going to brave the blizzard?
We have to explore the what the creature is trying to get down to. We have to see what's down there. It's not a root cellar.
It might have just been trying to get into the building. Although why it couldn't just break through the door, I can't imagine. But yes, we can't spend the night out in the blizzard.
What did you find on the stones?
I think Haragast will, I'll just say that Haragast explains, like pointing at different runes and saying, that one is ominous, that's a bad rune. And he talks about he who walks among the stones and tells them the story.
Could I do a hunt roll using myths to see if I can track something down on that from my my memory of legends and
He who
stuff?
walks among stones. Yeah, of course. I love that. I don't need a die roll. He who walks among stones is an ancient god, and it is drawn to standing stones. It is a god of statues made of stone. It is a god of tombstones. If it's stone and it stands, he who walks among stones is into it. Otherwise it's this is a very these sort of like wilderness gods are not well studied or well known. They're certainly not part of any official religion in the kingdom. And I think that probably feels like a good place to wrap, with the blizzard tightening around, nightfall coming, and you all in the cabin with a golden-haired god loose out in the wilderness around you, who's been nothing but kind, by the way.
No more food.
No more food. That's right. The food is spoiled. Let's take a quick stars and wishes before we go. Stars, things you enjoyed. Wishes, things you hope to see next time.
I'm going to give a star to the scenario. Just this kind of bottle episode feeling of that we're all just stuck in this place. It's a very different vibe to.
I wrote this in literally 10 minutes using Trophy Loom. So everything came out of Trophy Loom.
Yeah, it's great. It's just a real different and atmospheric thing, and I think it's given us a really nice opportunity to have the characters kind of bounce off of each other and struggle to interpret what's going on in their different ways. And I've really enjoyed that. So Star to all of that.
Yeah, Star for me, I really love I love the simmering tension between Horagust and Arnau. That's very, very fun. It really feels like these characters kind of coming into their own. I mean, all of them are, but like that particular relationship feels very, very real and good. Like Horagust just like won't drop it, right? Like every chance Horagust gets, it just brings up this incident, which was probably months and months ago, right? So yeah.
I was going to add with what Robin had said about. I don't think I'm trying to think. I don't think I've ever had played in a role playing game that kind of emulates the thing, right? Where we know something's up. We just can't prove it, and we're not bloodthirsty or hard enough that we're just going to like beat it out of the kid. You know, we're trying to like see if he slips up or you know, looking for clues. And to him, it would be pretty like bizarre, but we are like these characters have like seen things and they know what goes on out here in the wilderness. And but I don't think I've ever had that like captured in a role playing game, because there's usually like a way out, or I use suggestion and he tells me everything, you know, something like that. So it is kind of like a battle of wills.
I think the great thing, I mean, the paranoia was so strong, and I think it kind of comes from like out of character, kind of the whole thing screaming like, this is the world of trophies. So of course, you know, there is something like, you know, it's not just like a innocent, you know, boy coming. No, there has to be, you know, this is the whole kind of forest, and it really doesn't want you there. This kind of classical trophy line. I think that came out a lot in the paranoia today.
Yeah, I love that.
At least we
were
all expecting this, so you know.
Yeah, I love how much like out of character considerations were affecting like your perception of everything going on. I mean, I think you were right to be skeptical and suspicious, right? Otherwise, what are we all doing here, right? But like, yeah. It
would be like coming up to the house of the gingerbread house of Hansel and Gretel, right? Like, oh great, it's a house made out of candy, but wait, you know.
Yeah, I mean, he shows up with food, you know. Like
it also helps, I think, that for horror guests, things like this just rhyme with disaster, you know, because they have that, you know, we've seen so many horrendous things like this, and they all start like this, you know. I think for me, stars would be like, yeah, for like others have said, this is a genre first for me. I've not really done one like this, but I like, because you sort of spun it out of the loom. It feels a bit like some of them. It feels like a sort of OSR staple without like the sort of, yeah, like but very, it has that really trophy spin on it that made it feel unique, you know, even though it's something you see in lots of these sort of OSR games. But at the same time, like I feel like, actually, you know, we've done mystery solving. I've done that with you before, but it shows that like hunt rolls are just a pretty damn good way of like procedurally generating a thing that feels like a mystery, and it works really well. And I love it.
I think another start to basically all three of you with the characters. And for me, it was funny because coming into this group new, there was this kind of weird overlap between the US players all being very cautious, but also your characters. And it was kind of back and forth. And I was like, both as the character, as Serena, but also as a player, I was like, boy, everyone here is extremely cautious with whatever is going on. So these guys must have seen some shit before, you know. So, but it came like both the players and the characters kind of came together, because I don't have anything that to go on from before. So that was kind of fun.
I would see if he didn't have the grapes, right? If he just had like a piece of bread, oh, let me pick the mold off of it. But you know, he's got grapes. That's, you know.
He had to go for the sort of
like a bounty. Yeah.
What I
was
trying to
go for the sort of flourish, you know.
Yeah. When I wrote it, I was really thinking, I mean, I used all stuff from Loom, but I was picking things and choosing things and kind of twisting things around so that like essentially I was trying to like basically build in the clues of like, you should be suspicious of this, like into various descriptions, like the fact that he's not wearing shoes, the fact that, but then and earlier you saw footprints, and then oh, there's a mall. Oh, but the mall's got blood on it as well. And, you know, just like little things like that, just to build the tension. I think it worked out pretty well. So pretty happy with it. Any other stars and wishes?
I think I have a wish that I genuinely don't know if I'm going to survive this next session, because I think this is going to be pretty, and I just want to see if, like, through sheer bloody mindedness, see if I can get through it. But you know, also I just want to see more of this kind of simmering paranoia, and I think this one's really brought the best out in everyone, with like their role playing, and everyone just did an amazing job. And I think, you know, the addition of Sisterina as the kind of like, who are these three weird, hostile, suspicious dudes? Like, it just like really popped.
Yeah, I'll be excited to actually do the Croatoa, which is the actual module we're supposed to be doing, and is very similar. Like, it's very similar in tone and feel and themes. This little prelude thing I did is meant to bookend Croatoa. So yeah. Any other stars or wishes? Okay, well, with that, I'm going to stop the recording.